This debate seemingly has broken the internet, so we have to discuss it. I actually 125,000 tweets pertaining to the Douglas Murray versus Dave Smith debate, which was released, I think, on Friday on Joe Rogan. It might have been Thursday. I actually think it was Thursday of last week. X, as I mentioned, was positively dominated by this discussion surrounding the debate. And I want to say right at the top of this, I actually know both of these gentlemen. I know Douglas Murray because he is from the same circles as my husband in London, the highfalutin circles of London. And I have had dinner with him. I've been around him, and he's very kind. And I think that that's great because it's never great to go into trying to judge a debate when you just don't like somebody, just like I don't like Douglas Murray. He's actually always been very lovely to me and always very kind to me. And he's one of those people that I can say that even though I very much disagree with him, I don't then say, well, he's a terrible human being. But what was happening and what was at root of this discussion was credentialism. Essentially, the first 45 minutes of this debate, if you haven't seen it, and they were supposed to be debating what's happening in Israel, Gaza. It was really spent with Douglas Murray suggesting, I would say, outright saying that people need to have better expertise on various subjects before they can engage in discussion about those subjects, and he was really kind of condemning Joe Rogan here. They shouldn't even be platformed. And he specifically called out Ian Carroll, and he called out historian Daryl Cooper, which I was confused about because I think Daryl Cooper is great. But here is what Douglas Murray had to say.
If you're going to interview historians of the conflict or historians in general, why would you get somebody like Ian Carroll?
Yeah, but Ian Carroll, I didn't bring him on for that purpose. I brought him on because I want to find out, how does one get involved in the whole conspiracy theory business? Because his whole thing is just conspiracies.
Sure.
But
do you have any, there's been a tilt in the conversation, in both conversations in the last couple of years, and it's largely to do with people who have appointed themselves experts who are not experts.
So, yeah, Ian Carroll, I don't think has appointed himself an expert. I just think that he's somebody who's willing to ask questions and to introduce people to information. And I would offer that post-COVID, I think the idea of expertise has been completely shattered. I think we can all agree post-COVID, the idea of expertise has been shattered because all they offered us was this: you can't say this because you're not a doctor. You can't say this because you don't understand. You're not in the emergency rooms. What do you know about vaccines? And then it ended up being the regular people who were asking meaningful questions and not prepared to instantly roll up their sleeves because the government mandated it, wound up being correct despite the censorship. So we understood that we had to have more conversation, not less conversation. We actually need to hear independent voices that aren't a part of the organ of media or the organ of pharma. But the part that I think in terms of this debate between him and Dave Smith that I and many others were especially confused by is the idea that you need to physically visit a place before you can engage in a discussion about it. Take a listen.
Have you been to the crossing points?
No.
When were you last there at all?
I've never been.
You've never been?
Well, am I not allowed to talk about it now? I've never been to. Have you ever been to Nazi Germany? Are you allowed to have feelings about them?
You can't time travel, but you can.
Right.
But you can travel.
Okay, but so what? So what's the point?
No,
okay.
I find that
lots of people have been there and agree with me, and lots of people have been there and agree with you.
Yeah, but
so
if
I don't
you're
know
going to
what
spend a year and a half talking about a place, you should at least do the courtesy of visiting it.
All right. I just think this is a non-argument.
You don't
but
think?
Okay. No, I think it's a non-argument.
But if you're an expert,
Well, you have to go and touch the ground.
No, I think you have to see. I think it's a good idea to see stuff, particularly if you spend a career talking about something. Yes, I have a journalistic rule of trying never to talk about a country even in passing unless I've at least been there.
Okay,
it's
but that's
sort of
not
normal. It's a normal thing to do. You're talking about. Hang on, you're talking about crossing points. And not only have you never been to a crossing point in either Egypt or in Israel, but you've never even been to the region.
Okay. Again, I think this is a non-argument. I don't understand.
No, it's not a non-argument.
Yeah, it is.
It's not a non-argument if you're insisting that you're an expert of some kind, or not claiming you're an expert, but still talking about it, about the provisions going into Gaza or not, if you've never seen any of this going on.
So you're not
That's
allowed to
amazing
speak
to
about
me.
things that you've read about. You can only speak about things that you've seen with your own eyes.
You can talk about what you want,
Uh-huh.
as you're proving. But that is a different matter from spending an awfully long amount of time talking about an issue in a region you haven't even had the courtesy to visit.
So I'm genuinely not sure what that argument means, and I would definitely love for him to expand upon that, because that would virtually exclude everyone ever right, from being able to engage in a debate about anything, right? Unless you have money. Who's got the money to be traveling around the world so that we can visit to see the various places that all of our tax dollars are going? Also, I have actually been to Israel, and I would not cite myself as somebody who is more educated than Dave Smith on this topic. Absolutely not. In fact, I routinely text Dave Smith and ask him questions as I've been learning about this topic. I don't understand. I mean, if my tax dollars have to go towards that, I would imagine that I have a right to speak about it, and I shouldn't just have to fund myself getting out there. I really just didn't understand this. I don't think, as an example, that Australia should have been locked down in the way that it was locking down its citizens during COVID. I've never been to Australia. I don't think my tax dollars should be sent to Ukraine at this moment, because they can't even account for all the billions that we've already given them. They just lost it. It went into a dark hole. We've sent them all this money, and now these Ukrainian oligarchs are popping up, buying yachts in Saint Tropez. I saw them, okay? They're buying all of these Russian yachts. Never been to Ukraine. Think I have a right to say that and to keep harping on this fact that we need to stop giving money to these countries when it seems like they're just laundering it and putting it elsewhere. I don't think our government, looking into the past, should have dropped a bomb on praying Catholics in Nagasaki. I don't think that did anything to end the war. And I'd be happy to engage in a debate with any person that thinks that it has. Never been to Nagasaki. I don't think we should be funding LGBTQ programs in Pakistan. We are. Never been to Pakistan. I don't think, perhaps most ludicrously, when Rand Paul released his list of government excess spending that he does annually, and he told us that our government was funding Japanese quails. They were giving Japanese quails cocaine to see if it increased their sex drive. I don't think we should be doing that. I think it's absurd. And I thought that before I went to Japan for the first time last year. And when I went to Japan, I didn't see any Japanese quails, but did it make me any more or less of an expert or any more qualified to discuss whether or not we should be giving them cocaine? Because that registers to most people as an issue of basic morality. And I would argue also of extreme financial stupidity, like just common sense. I don't need to get on a plane to go observe a Japanese quail high on cocaine to tell you that I don't think we should be funding that. You know, I just have to have an ability to think in general. And I'm not sure exactly, and where I would push back here as well, what makes somebody an expert on something? Is it physically going someplace? Is it a degree that confers onto you some special powers? Is it money, having the money to visit places and to check it off and say, I visited this many places, and so now I'm an expert, or I can at least, engage in a topic that I care about? I think a lot of people who even are huge fans of Douglas Murray, and by the way, like I said, I have really enjoyed him personally. He's always been very kind to me. He's not like a lot of the people who engage in this ultra Zionism that drive me insane and who I can tell you are bad people. Like I'm not like putting him in the category of Seth Dillon and like Joel Berry of the Babylon Bee. He's very enjoyable. And so I was very surprised to hear him argue in this style. And I think even the people who are ultra Zionists said the same thing, that they were kind of confused by this line of argument. It seems more like an effort to control speech. And just to be clear, speech, if it's true, it doesn't really matter who the speaker is or where they've been or how many passport stamps they have. And even YouTuber God Saad, who's legitimately lost his mind and just rants and raves about how everything is anti-Semitic, had a pretty reasonable take about this debate. And he is also, he's a massive fan of Douglas Murray, has had him on his show multiple times, and here's what he had to say.
I thought it would have been probably better if he just said, here are 10 things that you guys espoused, and let me address how each of them is complete nonsense, rather than saying, we need historians to talk about these positions or people who have the right credentials. I think that's the wrong reflex to have. I think it's much better to judge people based on the ideas that they espouse. And earlier today, I put up a post on my X feed where I said, look, in Boolean algebra, you can test or establish whether a statement is true or false. It's binary system based on axiomatic truths, based on axiomatic properties, right? And that Boolean algebra statement is true or false, irrespective of whomever writes it down and whomever reads it. And so, by a similar analogical reasoning, a statement is true or false whether it's a plumber who said it or a eminent historian or a fancy professor. As a matter of fact, as I have explained repeatedly, and certainly the parasitic mind, all of the parasitic ideas that I discuss in the parasitic mind stem from professors. And in channeling the spirit of Orwell, it takes intellectuals to come up with some of the dumbest ideas.
And really, that's Thomas Sowell, who has done extensive research on showing you how academics and professors and the people who perceive themselves to be like the intellectual elite, the academia, have put forth the worst ideas in the world that have led to so many people being killed. Eugenics, people that were behind eugenics, all the things that they have done, and they do this with this sort of academic snobbery, is the reason why we have so much suffering worldwide. Like I said, Thomas Sowell has done extensive, brilliant work on that, talking about really speaking to the Harvard types and the Stanford types. And so it doesn't make me comfortable that we're seeing sort of this emergence of people who are beginning to think that only some people are capable of thinking. I think people are drawn to Ian Carroll because he's an imperfect character, because he's willing to at least investigate things and say when he gets things wrong, similar to me. If I'm looking for something, I ask for the public to help me find it. We have a right to investigate and to think. And Douglas Murray used to very much hold that position. Here he is on Lex Friedman back in 2022.
One argument they say is you, Douglas Murray, and you, Lex Friedman, don't have the right to talk about race and racism in America. It is our struggle. You are from a privileged class of people that don't know what it's like to be a black man or woman in America walking down the street.
I really resent that form of argumentation.
Sure.
I really resent it. I have the right to talk about whatever the hell I want, and no one's going to stop me or try to intimidate me, or tell me that I can't simply because of my skin color. And I think that if I said to somebody else the other way around, it would be equally reprehensible. If I said, shut up, you have no right to criticize anything that Douglas Murray says because you've not got my skin color. Okay, it's not an exact comparison, but seriously, is that a reasonable form of argument? You haven't been through everything I've been through in my life, therefore you can't comment. No. In that case, nobody can talk about anything. We might as well pack up, go home, and isolate ourselves.
For example, Holocaust survivors.
Yes.
There is a sense in which, maybe a basic sense of civility, when a Holocaust survivor is speaking about their experience of the Holocaust, than an intellectual from a very different part of the world is simply writing about nuanced geopolitics of World War II, just should not interrupt the Holocaust survivor.
We physically interrupt them if they're telling us their
with
story.
Words, with logic and reason, that the experience of the Holocaust survivor somehow fundamentally has a deeper understanding of the humanity and the injustice of the...
Well, first of all, again, we're in even deeper waters now, but in terms of wanting to listen to another person who has experienced something, yes, but not endlessly. Not endlessly. I mean, there are some people who've written about there are people who've written about the Holocaust who didn't experience the Holocaust and have written about it better than people who did. It's not...
That's great.
This idea that the lived experience, to use this terrible modern jargon, as if there's another type, this idea that the lived experience has to triumph over everything else is not always correct.
I very much agree with everything that he said there. So you wonder what has caused a shift in his viewpoints, or maybe it's not. Maybe I'm getting it wrong. It's not a shift in his viewpoints, and he can better explain why he now thinks that people have to have certain experiences in order to engage in a discussion. And sometimes discussions just being about, again, basic morality, basic principles. Should children and women be blown up into perpetuity as a response? That feels like a basic moral issue for me. This is going to get even crazier, you guys, because it does seem that we are constantly carving out these special territory for discussions pertaining to Israel. Like the smears are never more insane. And it's something to pay attention to on the right. I am telling you guys, what is happening right now is insane, right? They are trying to infringe upon our speech in ways that are getting very dark and very creepy. David Friedman, who was Trump's former U.S. ambassador in the first term, former U.S. ambassador to Israel, essentially is praising this current administration for jailing and deporting critics of Israel, and was specifically asked about me and Tucker Carlson, and he's calling for more deportation, jail, and the cutting of funding to anti-Semites, people that are openly discussing. This is going to be like Dave Smith in the future. Pay attention to this. Where are all of those free speech people who grifted off of free speech and who won't say anything? And recognizing that this current administration, is taking a turn that is quite dark, okay? It is not what we signed up for. We are supposed to be the people who defend speech. So why is it now I'm finding myself in agreement with Anna Kasparian and Cenk over at the Young Turks, who are calling out what is happening and how suddenly there is this squeeze on speech only as it pertains to the special topic of Israel? Take a listen to what Anna had to say on the Young Turks.
David Friedman, who actually was Trump's ambassador to Israel in his first term, he doesn't just stop at progressives and their critique of Israel. He's also focusing on the right wing as well. And I suspect that this is waking the right wing up.
Yeah, this is not going to play well.
Because if you think that free speech violations are only going to impact the left, you'd be mistaken. Take a look.
I condemn anti-Semitism on the right and on the left. I'm an equal opportunity condemner of anti-Semitism.
You're alluding to Candace Owens and Tucker Carlson.
Yeah, none of them are any good on the right. On the left, I don't like any of these anti-Semites, and I'm not shy about it. There's no reason to think we're ever going to convince them, but we can deport them, we can put them in jail, we can make their lives miserable, we can cut off their funding, and that's what the Trump administration is doing for the first time.
Okay, now understand what he considers anti-Semitism. And by the way, you're an American citizen. If you are spewing anti-Semitic garbage, you're actually free to do that as long as you don't act on it, right? Free speech is a thing. Hate speech is protected under the First Amendment. This guy thinks that simply criticizing how Israel is prosecuting the war is already anti-Semitic. It's already anti-Semitism. And he wants to throw you in prison for it.
Yeah.
In prison for it.
And by the way, that was an answer to a question about Tucker Carlson and Candace Owens. So we're not talking about student visas anymore.
Oh my God.
Now we're talking about core American podcasters, people in media on the right and the left. If you criticize Israel, he says, well, you have no heart and you have no mind. You have no heart because of course you should know when Israel slaughtered 15,000 children, it was the most moral thing to do. And if you dare disagree, we'll arrest you. And what did he say? Oh, we'll cut off your funding. By the way, he's like, it's anti-Semitic to say that the Jews would control speech in America. But if you dare cross Israel, we will cut off your funding, we will deport you, we will arrest you. But don't say it. If you say it, what I just said, I'm gonna call you an anti-Semite.
No, maybe I'll throw you in prison.
Okay, they're saying, well, we start with the left, but we're equal opportunity condemners.
Yeah.
So Tucker Carlson, Candace Owens, and everyone else, you start slightly criticizing Israel. We got a jail in Louisiana and then one in El Salvador that Israel can send you to via the US government.
It's insane, okay? It is insane. Time for Americans to wake up to what is happening, okay? Because our freedoms will be taken away very quickly. And yes, it is happening under this administration, okay? 1000% Trump is being surrounded by ultra-Zionists who are getting him to take stances that are running counter to freedom. And those of us that are calling it out, I don't care. I really don't care what you call me. I don't have to survive a Trump administration. My kids have to be able to grow up in a free country. I just can't. I will not tolerate it, whether it's happening on the left or the right.